Now, my sister screamed. You have to listen to me. Then she brought the heavy brass candlestick down. The $40,000 Ming vase I had spent 3 months restoring exploded into dust across the studio floor. She stood amidst the wreckage, chest heaving, waiting for me to cry or beg. I did neither. I calmly unlocked my phone, took 3 clear photos of her standing in the debris, and pressed the silent alarm button under the desk. Before I tell you what I did with the candlestick she dropped, and the lawsuit that followed, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I want to see how far this story travels. My hands didn't start shaking until I was inside my car, 3 miles away from the studio. The adrenaline that had kept me statue still while Brittany screamed was finally receding, leaving behind a cold, hollow ache in my chest. I drove automatically, the streets of Seattle blurring past until I turned up the long, winding driveway to my sanctuary. They call it the Glass House now. A sprawling mid-century modern structure perched on a cliff edge, featured in architectural digests and valued at over $1.2 million. But when I bought it 2 years ago, it was a rotting carcass. It was a foreclosure filled with black mold and broken windows, a disaster that terrified everyone else. I didn't see the rot. I saw the bones. That has always been my job. I'm Kendra, 26 years old, and I bring dead things back to life. High-end vintage restoration isn't just about glue and paint. It's about seeing value where everyone else sees trash. It's a skill I learned out of necessity, growing up in a house where I was the invisible infrastructure while my sister was the marquee event. To my parents, Richard and Susan, I was the ghost in the walls, the one who fixed the Wi-Fi, balanced the checkbooks, and cleaned up the messes, all so Brittany could shine a little brighter. I was useful, never celebrated. I parked and walked into my living room, the silence of the house wrapping around me like a protective blanket. I ran my hand along the teak wall paneling I had stripped and refinished myself, inch by agonizing inch. My parents love to tell people they built me. They tell their country club friends that they provided the seed money for my empire. The truth is a ledger they refuse to read. When I was 19, they gave me $5,000. Not as a gift, but as a loan to get me out of the house so they could convert my bedroom into a content studio for Brittany. I paid that $5,000 back within 6 months, with interest. Every screw, every sheet of sandpaper, every auction bid since then, has been funded by my own sweat. But facts don't matter to them. In my family, we operate on a different kind of economy. A twisted sort of narcissistic math. To Richard and Susan, success is a zero-sum game. They believe the universe allocates a finite amount of luck to every family. If I have a thriving business and a beautiful home, I haven't earned it through 80-hour weeks and bleeding fingers. In their minds, I have stolen Brittany's portion. I am the thief who raided the family vault of potential, leaving their golden child with nothing but failed ventures and counterfeit dreams. I walked to the kitchen island and poured a glass of water, my eyes landing on the security monitor. The feed from the studio was still active. The police had left. The janitorial crew I hired was already sweeping up the porcelain dust. I zoomed in on the empty spot where the vase had stood. Brittany hadn't just broken an object. She had tried to break my spirit, to remind me that everything I built was fragile enough for her to smash. She thought the destruction would bring me to my knees, force me to open my checkbook to fund her next illusion. She didn't realize that when you spend your life fixing broken things, you learn exactly where the cracks are. And you learn that some things aren't worth repairing. Some things need to be swept away so you can build something bulletproof in their place. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from my mother. We need to talk. Now. No apology. No question about whether I was okay. Just the demand. I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down, took a sip of water, and watched the sun set over the trees. They thought the war had just started. They didn't know I'd been fortifying my defenses for years. It took exactly 1 week for them to regroup. I spent those 7 days documenting the damage, filing insurance claims that I knew would be contested, and securing my inventory. I didn't reach out. I didn't ask for reimbursement. I simply waited, because I knew the pattern. In a family like mine, silence is interpreted as weakness, and weakness is an invitation to attack. On Tuesday morning, I was in the studio, assessing a set of water-damaged Victorian chairs, when the front door chimed. I didn't look up immediately. I assumed it was a courier. Then I heard the distinctive click of heels on the concrete, my mother's heels. I straightened up, wiping varnish from my hands, and turned to see Richard and Susan standing in the entryway. They didn't look apologetic. They looked like generals surveying a battlefield they had already conquered. "This place is a mess," my mother said, wrinkling her nose at the sawdust and the drop cloths. "You really work like this?" "I'm working," I said, my voice flat. "What do you want?" My father stepped forward, bypassing the pleasantries. He placed a heavy hand on a workbench I had just cleared. "We need to discuss Brittany. She's in trouble, Kendra. Serious trouble." I imagine she is, I said. Assault and destruction of property are usually frowned upon. Don't be dramatic, Susan snapped. The vase was an accident. She was upset. But this is bigger than that. Because of you, because of the stress you caused her by hoarding your success, she made a mistake. I almost laughed. I caused her stress? By existing? She felt pressure to keep up, Richard said, his tone reasonable, as if explaining gravity to a toddler. And in that pressure, she made some errors in judgment with her online store. She sold some handbags that weren't exactly authentic. Counterfeit, I corrected. She sold fake luxury goods. That's federal wire fraud. It was a sourcing error. Susan's voice rose to a shrill pitch. She didn't know. But now the feds are involved. They're talking about fines, Kendra. Prison time. She's 24 years old. She can't go to prison. I leaned back against my desk, crossing my arms. So, hire a lawyer. We can't, Richard said, his face hardening. Her assets are frozen. Our liquidity is tied up in the market. We need you to help. You have the cash. We know you do. You just bought that house. You want me to pay for her defense? We want you to fix this, Susan said. Liquidation. Sell some of this stuff. She waved a dismissive hand at the priceless antiques surrounding us. Pay the fines. Get her a top-tier attorney. Help her rebrand. It's the least you can do after everything we've given you. Given me? I asked quietly. You mean the $5,000 I paid back 6 years ago? We gave you the inventory, Richard shouted, his calm facade cracking. Those chairs? That table? That was family property. We let you take it to start your little hobby. And you turned it into a fortune, while your sister struggled. You built this on our backs. I stared at him. The lie was so audacious. So complete. It was almost impressive. They truly believed it. They had rewritten history to make themselves the architects of my success, so they could feel entitled to the dividends. I'm not liquidating anything, I said. And I'm not paying her legal bills. Then you're sending your sister to jail, Susan hissed. You're choosing money over blood. I'm choosing not to be robbed twice, I said. Get out of my studio. They didn't leave immediately. Richard leaned in close, his eyes cold. You think you're untouchable in your glass house, Kendra. But remember, glass breaks. If you don't help us, we will take what is owed. One way or another. They turned and walked out, leaving the threat hanging in the air like smoke. I watched them go, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. They were desperate, and desperate people don't stop at threats. They escalate. I looked around my studio, at the fragile, beautiful things I had spent years protecting. I realized then that a lock on the door wasn't enough. I didn't just need a defense. I needed a trap. I didn't sleep that night, but not because I was afraid. I was calculating. Richard was right about one thing. Glass breaks. But tempered glass, the kind I use to protect million-dollar artifacts, is designed to withstand pressure that would shatter anything else. I realized that fighting them with emotion was a losing battle. They thrived on emotion. They fed on guilt and shouting matches. To beat them, I had to stop being their daughter and start being what they feared most. A creditor. I called them the next morning. I didn't sound angry. I sounded resigned, the tone of a beaten child finally falling back in line. I have a solution, I told my father. Meet me at the office. They arrived at my warehouse office at noon. Brittany was wearing oversized sunglasses to hide her swollen eyes, looking like a tragic celebrity. Richard and Susan swept in with the air of vindicated monarchs. They sat across from me at the conference table, the only piece of furniture in the room that I hadn't restored myself. It was cold. Industrial steel. I'm glad you came to your senses, Richard said, loosening his tie. We knew you'd do the right thing eventually. Family helps family. I can't pay the fines directly, I said, sliding a thick leather binder across the metal table. My liquidity is tied up in inventory. But I can buy the debt. Susan frowned, picking up the binder. What does that mean? It means I become Brittany's investor, I explained calmly. I will cover the legal fees, the restitution to the defrauded customers, and the rebranding costs to keep her out of prison. In exchange, we form a partnership. I handle the financials to ensure this doesn't happen again. Brittany handles the creative. Brittany perked up, pulling her sunglasses down. So, you pay for everything? And I keep running my brand? Essentially, I lied. But since I'm putting up the capital, I need security. It's a standard partnership agreement. It just gives me oversight so the feds don't come back knocking. Richard didn't even open the binder. He just smiled. That smug, self-satisfied smile that used to make me feel small. See? I told you she'd step up. She just needed a push. He looked at me, You're finally acting like a sister, Kendra. It's about time you shared the wealth. There are conditions, I said, pointing to the signature tabs. Section 4 covers assets. Since Brittany has no physical collateral, the security for the loan is the brand itself. Intellectual property, digital accounts, the name, standard boilerplate. Richard waved a hand dismissively. Just sign it, Brittany. She's paying the bills. Let her have her paperwork. Brittany grabbed the pen. She didn't read a single word. She didn't see the clause on page 14 regarding the UCC1 financing statement. She didn't understand that by signing, she wasn't just accepting a loan. She was perfecting a lien against her entire existence. She was legally categorizing her Instagram handle, her website, and her email list as distress assets collateralized by my money. To them, this was a bailout. To me, it was a deed of transfer. Done, Brittany said, dropping the pen. She looked at me with a smirk returning to her lips. Try not to be too controlling with the budget, okay? I have a vision for the rebrand. It needs to be high-end. We'll follow the contract, I said. They left the office high-fiving, already talking about where they would go for dinner to celebrate avoiding jail time. They walked out thinking they had bullied me into submission, thinking they had secured a blank check. I watched them go through the glass walls of my office. I picked up the contract, the ink still wet. They thought they had won a partnership. They didn't realize they had just signed a confession of judgment. The silence lasted exactly 89 days. For 3 months, I played the role of the dutiful partner. I paid the fines. I hired the web developers. I approved the ad spend. Brittany preened on social media, posting photos of her new office, which was actually just a rented corner of my warehouse, and talking about her comeback journey. She never mentioned my name. Not once. To her 500,000 followers, she was a phoenix rising from the ashes of a misunderstanding, funded by her own resilience. To me, she was a tenant, living on borrowed time. Then came the breach. I knew it would happen. Entitlement is a habit, and habits are hard to break. It started small, a company card charge for a personal spa day, coded as client relations. Then a flight to Tulum, for a content shoot that was clearly a vacation with her boyfriend. The total unauthorized spend hit $12,000 in a single month. I didn't call her. I didn't send a warning email. I simply opened my laptop and logged into the registrar. Because of the power of attorney clause buried in the partnership agreement, I didn't need her permission to act. I needed a reason. And she had just handed me 12,000 of them. At 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, I executed the transfer. I rerouted the DNS for her website to point directly to my restoration portfolio. I changed the passwords on the business email accounts. Then, the pièce de résistance. I used the notarized transfer agreement to take ownership of her Instagram account. I didn't delete it. I didn't ban her. I simply changed the handle from @BrittanyLifestyle to @Kendra's Restoration Diary and archived every single one of her posts. 5 years of selfies, brunch photos, and carefully curated influencer captions vanished into the digital void, replaced by a single high-resolution image of a restored 18th century cabinet. The caption read, "True value is built, not bought. Welcome to the new chapter." I was asleep when she found out. I woke up to the sound of pounding on my front door. It was 7 a.m. I checked my phone first. 47 missed calls. I walked to the door, coffee in hand, and opened it to find Brittany standing there, mascara running down her face, her phone clutched in her hand like a weapon. "You deleted me," she screamed, her voice cracking. "You deleted my life, my followers, my brand. I can't log in. It says I don't own the account." "You don't," I said calmly, taking a sip of coffee. "You defaulted on the partnership agreement. Section 8. Subsection C. Misuse of funds results in immediate asset forfeiture. The brand was collateral. You spent the money. I took the collateral." "You can't do that!" she shrieked, lunging forward as if she might try to grab my phone. "That account is worth millions. It's my identity." "It was worth millions," I corrected. "Now it's a marketing tool for my restoration business. And judging by the engagement on the cabinet photo this morning, your followers prefer antique wood to your vacation selfies. I'll sue you," she spat. "Mom and Dad will kill you." "Give it back." "There's nothing to give back," I said. "The account is legally mine. The debt is paid. You're free, Brittany. You have no criminal record, no fines, and no job. You wanted a fresh start? You got one." She stared at me, her chest heaving, realization finally dawning in her eyes. For the first time, she saw me not as the sister she could bully, but as the person holding the keys to her entire world. She turned and ran back to her car, sobbing into her phone, presumably calling our parents. I watched her go, feeling a strange, cold peace settling over me. I had just erased her digital existence with a few keystrokes. It was brutal. It was efficient. And it was exactly what she deserved. I went back inside and got ready for work. I thought it was over. I thought I had won. I didn't know that while I was playing chess, my father was preparing to flip the entire board. I locked the office door, certain it was over. Brittany's empire absorbed. Her debt erased. I grabbed my bag and reached for the exit, ready to leave the family chaos behind. The door slammed shut. Richard stood outside, smiling that cold predator's smile. Susan hovered behind him. "Going somewhere?" he asked. "It's finished," I said. Brittany breached. I enforced. He laughed and handed me an envelope. "You've been served." Richard and Susan were suing me for a constructive trust, claiming the $5,000 I received at 19 was investment capital, and that the antiques that launched my company were family heirlooms. They wanted half my won, business, and half the glass house. It was control. Weaponized through court. They thought I would cave. They were wrong. In court, Richard portrayed himself as a heartbroken parent who sacrificed everything. Under oath, he swore the Ming vase, the Victorian armoires, and the porcelain were family property, given to me in 2018. My lawyer slid forward Exhibit C, an insurance claim Richard filed that same year, reporting those exact items as stolen and collecting $200,000. The courtroom froze. Either he lied then to cash the check, or he was lying now to steal my company. The judge ordered both Richard and Susan taken into custody. Their assets were frozen, their social circle evaporated, and the truth scorched every lie they'd built their lives on. Brittany lost her safety net and tumbled into real life. I did not look back. That night, I returned to the glass house. I sanded down a damaged chair, layer by layer, finally seeing the clean wood beneath. You cannot repair rot, you have to cut it out. My parents tried to claim my future. Instead, they destroyed their own. And what's left now, my home, my company, my life is mine alone.